Happy Tuesday and welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We have got a stacked 2 hours for you. If this is the first time you're hanging out with us during the Olympics, you're welcome in advance because we're going to have great Olympic guests for you every single day. Julia Mancuso, Apolo Ohno, they're going to both join us from Italy. So no updates yet on whether they're going to send us some food from Italy while they're going there. But we'll at least get Olympic updates throughout the course of the morning. We got plenty of NBA news to get into. But Caroline, as the fallout continues, as we sit here now, 48 hours removed almost from crowning a Super Bowl champion, it's good to look back and try and figure out what we make of everybody now moving forward, including the Seahawks. We spent a lot of time yesterday breaking down the Seahawks and what it meant. But the real question is, what's it mean moving forward? It's always fun way too early to try and figure out if what we saw is what we're going to see. So given everything positive that we said yesterday for the Seahawks, are we on the verge of one of those little runs? Are we on the verge of like almost dynastic moment? Can we see the Seahawks suddenly becoming this annual powerhouse based on what we saw this year?
I don't think the Seahawks are going anywhere. I mean, Kenneth Walker is really their only big time, big name, big contributor free agent. I mean, they have a majority of their team locked up at least, not just for the next year, but for the next 2 years. So they're in a window right now where they can absolutely go on a run. Mike McDonald is not going anywhere. As long as he is calling the shots in Seattle, you feel really confident that that's going to be a championship caliber defense. But I feel like we do this every year. We see one team winning a Super Bowl and we instantly go dynasty. Now, when a team wins 2 or 3 within the span of 5 years, definitely, okay, yeah, we can talk about a dynasty. But we want so badly to turn one championship into something more. When the 2 dynasties that we've had in modern football were the Patriots and now the Chiefs. I would say we're still living in a Chiefs dynasty. What do those 2 teams have in common? What do those 2 dynastic runs have in common? Well, they have elite quarterbacks. You have Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, 2 guys that are debated as the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the sport. No disrespect to Sam Darnold, but he's not that guy. Like, I think that we can have a conversation of whether or not Sam Darnold is even a top 10 quarterback in the league right now. So I don't think the Seahawks are going anywhere. The defense is going to be nasty. Defense wins championships. We've seen that the last couple of years with the Eagles last year, now the Seahawks this year. But the Seahawks play in a really difficult, really deep division. The NFC is stacked. I don't think the NFC is going anywhere. I don't think Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson are going to be, out of the playoffs for very long. Those teams in the AFC are still going to be a factor. So I know I don't think the Seahawks are, have a looming dynasty or a dynasty that's loading. But I also think that the Seahawks are going to be a playoff team, championship contender for the near future.
Yeah, I think that's well said by you because part of this also, we look at the dynastic run of the Patriots. Well, they did have the advantage for many of those years of feasting on an absolutely terrible AFC East for the most part, right? The Chiefs, for the most part, have been able to feast on an AFC West that has seen more bad than good over the course of their dynasty. Now, that doesn't take anything away from it. It's just part of the building block of how you get to a bunch of wins every single year. I don't know how you do that in this version of the NFC West. I think right now in the NFC, it's fair to look at some of these teams like the Eagles that you've already mentioned, even like the Lions, teams that are perennial contenders. I think that it's fair that the Seahawks will find themselves in that same category. But within their own division, there's also the Rams and the 49ers that find themselves in that same category. When you're playing in the NFC West, you don't start the year with 6 wins sort of in your mind out of the gate. You've got a gauntlet to get through, especially right now for the next several years. I mean, the Rams are going to go all in. Do we really believe, I believe that the second best team in the NFL was the Rams. I think the Rams could have just as easily won a Super Bowl this year as the Seahawks. So it's hard for me to stack a bunch of these together for Seattle because this is the beginning. Also, there's the theme that we've seen over the last few years. We've fallen in love with certain teams, and then there are coordinator changes, and coordinator changes are significant, Caroline. We've seen that. I mean, if the Eagles, it's an every other year thing. They get the coordinator right, they're in the Super Bowl. They get the coordinator wrong, they miss the playoffs. We all think Sirianni's getting fired. The Lions spent all summer telling us, don't worry, they're going to be just fine. I mean, Amon St. Brown was loud and screaming about the fact that these guys know ball, we're going to be fine. Yes, we have all new coaches everywhere. It doesn't really matter, and it mattered. So I think we also need to see what the offense looks like next year for Seattle, knowing that Klint Kubiak, their offensive coordinator, is headed to Vegas as a head coach. That's a new coaching hire that has to come in. I have a lot of faith in Mike Macdonald, the head coach. I truly do. But I think it's a little bit of revisionist history to acknowledge, well, he found Klint Kubiak without acknowledging that he also had to fire his first offensive coordinator, right? So coordinator changes are significant to me, and that's also just enough of a question mark that I think while it's great to look at it and say, hey, this is a young team with a really talented head coach, I think trying to put the word dynasty anywhere near the Seahawks today feels incredibly premature.
Getting the coordinator hire right, I think, is the most important and most pressing aspect of the Seahawks offseason. Ask the Eagles how important getting the offensive coordinator hire right is. Ask the Lions how important it is to get the coordinator hires right. Ask any of these teams who have been knocking on the door or at the mountaintop of the National Football League. And then there's inevitable attrition that happens in any championship team, college, NFL, whatever it might be, that when you win a championship, all of a sudden everybody wants a little bit of DNA of that championship. We always talk about the NFL as a copycat league. So what worked for the Seahawks, well, Klint Kubiak, offensive mastermind so the Raiders say, hey, look, we would like an offensive mastermind to help get us into the conversation. It's natural. It happens every single year. Getting that hire right is imperative. Because while I agree, and I think that Fitz, you would agree as well, but the Seahawks as long as Mike Macdonald is coaching the Seahawks, their defense is going to be nasty. Their defense is going to be a factor. But we've seen a lot of the Cleveland Browns, and I'm not saying the Seahawks are the Cleveland Browns, but an elite defense isn't always enough to get you into the postseason conversation. Sam Darnold is one of those quarterbacks that I view as maybe a sum of the parts around him. That's no disrespect to Sam Darnold. I think there are a lot of teams that could upgrade with the kind of quarterback that Sam Darnold is. But I look at Brock Purdy as a guy that's very similar. A sum of the pieces around him. Put a great defense around him. Give him enough weapons. Give him an offensive mastermind. And, we see that Sam Darnold can do enough to win you a Super Bowl. But if you don't have the right coach around Sam Darnold, I could see some regression. I could see the Seahawks offense tapering off just enough, because I think the Seahawks offense did enough to win them a Super Bowl. Sam Darnold obviously carried the team against the Rams in the NFC Championship game, but the offense didn't have to do too much. Sam Darnold also didn't make the fatal mistakes in the Super Bowl to make the Seahawks feel a little bit more vulnerable. So getting that offensive coordinator hire right is imperative to put the right pieces around Sam Darnold, especially when you have a head coach that isn't the offensive mastermind that can kind of, seep into that side of the ball.
Yeah, and look, the Seahawks right now going into free agency, Kenneth Walker, we all know is set to hit the market. We'll see if that actually happens. Rashid Shaheed, who we've credited so much as a great acquisition, set to hit the open market. Again, we'll see if that happens. Kobe Bryant, another big name on there. That was a big decision, or a big, I should say, player for them. And then option decisions. I don't really think there's an option decision on Jackson Smith-Njigba. I would say that now he is eligible. Once you finish your third year, you're eligible for extension. If I am the Seahawks, I am locking Jackson Smith-Njigba up to the highest paid. I'm making him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL right now and just getting ahead of it. I'll make him the highest paid guy today because in a year that'll be eclipsed. Might as well get that deal done. Also, sneaky special teams, their punter, Michael Dixon, I should say, is also eligible. So they've got some people they need to sign, but they have plenty of money to do it. If you looked right now at the NFC as a whole, if you had to take the Seahawks or the field, I think we're both taking the field here. This feels like we're being negative to Seattle. I want to couch here. I don't think I'm being negative to Seattle. I just think that next year, if we're talking about top-tier teams, realizing that this year, the Eagles won 11 games, the Rams won 12 games, the 49ers, I should say the 49ers and Rams both won a bunch of games. If you stack it all the way across, there's just too many good. The Bears won a bunch of football teams. I think I put them in that same category, but I don't necessarily. If I had to take the Seahawks or the field, it's easier to take the field because there's several teams that can go out there, pop off, and get to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to give me one team or the field, 99.99999% of the time, I'm going to take the field because it's just not smart to put all of your eggs into one basket, especially when we're waking up on February 10th and we have the entirety of an offseason ahead of us, and especially when you don't have that elite quarterback. Now, we spent all day yesterday talking about how the Eagles and the Seahawks have kind of rewired our brains of what is necessary for a championship contender, but at the end of the day, quarterbacks are king. Offense is king. And when it comes to a trust level, when it comes to betting on future success, it's so much more easy and probably so much more reliable to err on the side of elite quarterback teams with offenses that we trust. Now, again, I want to reiterate what you just said. That is no disrespect to the Seattle Seahawks, a worthy champion, a team that was the best team in the National Football League, a team that did everything right, a team that has shifted the script and changed the script of how we view elite teams in the National Football League. But it's really hard to win back-to-back Super Bowls. It's really hard to find that level of continuity of success. So if you're giving me the Seahawks or the field, I'm taking the field in the NFL. I'm taking the field in the NFC. Honestly, I'm probably taking the field over the NFC West as a whole. I don't know if the sports books have, way too early Super Bowl odds for next season. I would venture to guess that either the Seahawks or the Rams are the betting favorite to win the Super Bowl next year. But I would probably take the field over the NFC West just because, like I said earlier, I don't think that the Bills are going anywhere. I don't think the Ravens are missing the postseason in back-to-back years. I don't think the Bengals are missing the postseason in 3 consecutive years. I don't think the Eagles' offense is going to be as inept as it was this past season next season. I don't think the Lions are missing out on the postseason next year. I don't think the Chiefs are missing out on the postseason next year. I mean, there's a laundry list of teams that we view as having the potential to be elite that weren't standing in the Seahawks' way this season. I don't expect that trend to continue. So it's just going to be really difficult, not just for the Seahawks, but any team to compete.
Yeah, and look, also, as we mentioned a couple of times yesterday, no team ever has gone through their entirety of a playoff run without a single turnover, right? I don't know if you stay that hot. So if we're talking Seattle versus
and
the
clean.
field, is Sam Darnold going to be the quarterback that absolutely never turns the ball over, or is Sam going to be the quarterback that throughout the course of the regular season turn the ball over regularly? So I don't think we know the answer to that. There are some things that Seattle needs to address. Again, they've got a couple of guys in their secondary that they've got to figure out. And Caroline, I don't hate the idea of finding another pass catcher. I know, obviously, we love Cooper Kupp and we love JSN. There's no doubt about it. But just the target share to JSN, I wonder if they go into the draft. I think secondary is probably their main, continuing to bolster that portion of a great defense up. But I just like the idea of somebody else that can do some heavy lifting so that if JSN's not Superman, they don't find themselves in a slump. But really, we're picking, like, we're definitely splitting hairs to try and find some weaknesses for a young team that has a lot of talent.
What the Seahawks are facing this offseason is manageable. Rashid Shaheed, Kenneth Walker, with the Seahawks cap situation, if they want to re-sign both of those guys, they can. But to your point, the question is, can we upgrade in those areas? Is it necessary with Zach Charbonnet in the fold to re-sign Kenneth Walker? I know that's weird to say that 2 days removed from him being the Super Bowl MVP, but how will they decide to retool and rewire the pieces that they already have existing offensively? Where can they get younger so they can continue to keep the Super Bowl window open? I'm with you. Secondary and pass catchers, just offensive weapons as a whole, I think will be the 2 priorities for Mike Macdonald this offseason.
And getting the right offensive coordinator, as we mentioned. Plenty of positivity in Seattle is, frankly, they're still celebrating and should continue celebrating as long as they possibly can, being the Super Bowl champions. But what about the other side of this equation? We've broken down what's next for Seattle. What's next for the Patriots after their loss in the Super Bowl? We'll figure that out next.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to this.
Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knippel and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see, he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knippel. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70. And then like the air went out of the ball for a month. And it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
The Patriots return basically all of their impact players in 2026. They will be a better team next year without question. Lots of work to be done in a much more difficult schedule, but this team will be better. That is the sentiment for some, but not the sentiment for everybody as we try and figure out what next year means for the New England Patriots. And, you know, this is that moment where, again, it's really easy after a Super Bowl loss. We all said, Burrow's going to be back. It's no big deal. After an NFC Championship game loss last year, we said, Jaden Daniels has the Washington Commanders set up. They're about to go on a run. Dan Campbell was like, you know what? We're going to be fine. Newsflash, doesn't always work out that way. So they'll be back. Often said in football, rarely happens. In fact, yesterday, the most arbitrary stat. I love these arbitrary. Only 4 quarterbacks ever won a Super Bowl after losing their first appearances. That was yesterday. We were running with no quarterback has ever lost a Super Bowl in his second year and then returned to win a Super Bowl. Like that has anything to do with anything.
Like twice.
Now, correlation and causation are very different things, kids. Google it. So, you know, I do think, though, there's a fine line here, Caroline, because certainly this is a team that had its flaws, and those flaws didn't matter. We can't say out of one side of our mouth leading up to the Super Bowl, hey, it was an easy schedule, but it doesn't matter. You're here. And now turn around looking forward and not acknowledge the fact that it's great that they were in the Super Bowl, but this was a flawed football team that was ahead of schedule that probably played a little better than people thought against a weaker level of opponents. Like, these are all actual facts in breaking down who the Patriots were and who the Patriots will be.
Yeah, and look, the Patriots got themselves to the Super Bowl. There's nobody that can take that away from this team or from the Patriots fan base. I understand Patriots fans' frustration with just the level of negative commentary surrounding this team. To what I will say to Patriots fans is, everybody hates you for a reason. It's because you won everything all the time. So maybe it's not the worst thing in the whole entire world. You know, you can't be, the arch nemesis villain of the NFL and also have everybody throwing you a ticker tape parade anytime you get to a Super Bowl. I would be concerned, though, moving forward about the Patriots' longevity of how they are currently constructed. Like you said, they are a flawed football team. The offensive line was a flaw of this team all season long, but you had Drake May playing like an MVP caliber quarterback, and that kind of overshadowed a lot of warts on this offensive line. They ran the ball incredibly well. Again, overshadowed a lot of warts on this offensive line. Had an easier schedule, a lighter schedule. I know there's no such thing as an easy schedule in the NFL. Yeah, the Patriots had one. The Patriots had a lighter path on their way to the Super Bowl. Again, doesn't take away from the fact that you got to a Super Bowl, but there was no team that was going to expose the warts and the flaws on this team on their path to the Super Bowl until they got to the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think the Patriots are going to be an overly competitive football team until they figure out their left side of the line. Will Campbell's not a starting left tackle in the NFL. That was a concern going into the draft, was Will Campbell's arm length. And we always joke about that going into draft time, right? Quarterback hand size and, tackle arm length. But those things start to rear their ugly heads whenever the differences in the margins in these big time games are like razor thin. So if your arm is half an inch shorter than a typical tackle, well, that half an inch is really going to show itself. It's really going to, come to fruition in these big time games. So I think that they have to figure out the offensive line. It's going to hurt the Patriots roster construction when you had the number 4 overall pick and you spent it on a guard, because that's probably what Will Campbell is. Look, Stephon Diggs had a great season, but he is 32 and he'll turn 33 next season. How much high level football does Stephon Diggs have left in his career? Can he be, for Drake May next season, what he was this past season? Same thing with Hunter Henry, an aging tight end. So the Patriots do have a young team, a young quarterback on a rookie deal. That is like the best currency that you can have in the NFL. But also there are pieces where they absolutely positively need to upgrade, and at certain positions that aren't the easiest to upgrade when you don't have premier slots in the draft.
I think at some point when you start looking at the way this team played and you start looking at the needs that this team has, it's fair to say, hey, that was a really good year. Like, I don't think the Washington analysis was bad a year ago when we said, hey, this team is ahead of its skis. The Patriots have a lot of holes. They had a lot of holes coming into this season. They spent their money really wisely, and it worked. It's rare for a team to spend $100 million and then get a bunch of talent that's worked out. And to be very clear here, they got talent that maybe everybody else wasn't jumping over their skis for, but certainly made impact. Like Robert Spillane is a great example of a player that maybe not everybody else was coveted and chasing in free agency, and then had a massive impact on this Patriots defense. So I think the Patriots have the right building blocks to continue to move forward. I can say that and also say that I think had they played a more difficult schedule this year, they were probably an 8 or 9 win team. So look no further than Vegas. Vegas projected them to be the favorites in 11 games this year coming into the season. So Vegas was not surprised, all right? I say that as a caveat because right now Vegas gives shorter odds, better odds, for the Buffalo Bills to win the division next year than the New England Patriots. So the very same group of people that saw that the Patriots were likely to win a bunch of football games are now telling us very early that the Patriots are likely to finish second in their division. Vegas doesn't always get it right, but I think this is important context. You start to look at who the Patriots were and where the Patriots have to go to. You're right, Caroline. They need weapons. They need help on the offensive line. They need some pieces. Can they address that? Yes. Drake May's also got to continue to grow into whoever he's going to be as a starting quarterback. Like, it's okay for all of us to say Drake May was really good in the regular season, and in the playoffs, Drake May wasn't. So now we got to figure out what that means for next year. Like right now, if I was power ranking the AFC, you see the teams there, the Ravens, the Bills, the Chargers. I would take all of those teams going into next year ahead of New England. I would take Denver going into next year ahead of New England. I would take Jacksonville next year ahead.
Kansas City.
Of the Patriots. If we believe, I probably take Kansas City. I'm not sure what to do with Mahomes' injury when he comes back, but you're probably right. I can go up and down the list, and it's pretty easy for me, not being a Patriots hater and not trying to pile on after a Super Bowl loss. It's pretty easy for me to find the Patriots out of the playoffs next year. Like, I think the Bills are the favorite in the division, so now they're chasing a wild card. Well, there's only so many of those wild card spots, and I believe that the AFC West is going to have a bunch of good football teams. I believe that we've seen enough to know that whether we love the Texans offense or not, they make the playoffs every year, right? Like, so it's easy for me to stack all these bricks up and say, man, that step back next year for the Patriots gets me to 8 or 9 wins. And if I get them to 8 or 9 wins, I'm not sure they even make the playoffs. So it just speaks to where the Patriots actually are. If they were super ahead last year, it's okay for me to see that they're going to come back to earth this year.
And look, I hear Patriots fans screaming at us through their laptops, their phones, however you're watching and listening. Because you just mentioned the Chargers. You mentioned, thank you so much. You mentioned the Chargers. You mentioned Denver. You mentioned the Texans. If I'm a Patriots fan, I'm saying we just beat those 3 teams. We just beat those 3 teams in the postseason on the path to the Super Bowl. So I hear you, Patriots fans. I hear your frustration. I hear you saying, why are you giving those teams that we just beat the benefit of the doubt, but we're not getting any of it either? I think it's a couple of things. I think it's the recent history that has shown us when young quarterbacks are ahead of schedule, they come back down to earth. Joe Burrow getting to the Super Bowl in year 2 and hasn't made his way back since and has missed the postseason the last 2 years. Jaden Daniels getting his team to the NFC Championship game in year 1 and the Commanders falling back down to earth in year 2. I know a lot of that has to do to injury. Wouldn't wish that on anybody, but there is at least a big enough sample size of young quarterbacks having a rocky start, at least in their first contract. You can reach the highest of the highs, and then you can plummet back down to the lowest of the lows. The second thing is I just cannot get past the level, or maybe lack thereof, level of difficulty that the Patriots had. That is something that I think was lucky. They were fortunate to have a lighter schedule. You don't get that every single year. But with that being said, Fitz, if we're going to look at the construct of the AFC East, I don't know who you would pick today to win the AFC East. Would it be New England? Would it be the Bills? Would it be
the Bills? The Bills. I'm all in on the Bills. Yeah, the Bills will win the division next year.
I would agree with you that just based off of vibe, based off of feeling, based off of projection, I would probably take the Bills. But also schedule, like we just mentioned with the Patriots, schedule has so much to do with it. When the Patriots in the AFC South get the Jags, well, the Bills get the Texans. I don't think that that's an easier draw for the Bills, having a second place schedule. In the NFC West, when the Patriots get the Seahawks, the Bills get the Rams. So if we're going to talk about how big of a part that schedule plays into this, it's not like the Bills are getting any sort of easy draw or anything significantly easier than the Patriots.
No, that's all fair. The Bills played a tougher schedule this year than the Patriots played because they were playing a first-place schedule versus a last-place schedule. And when people say, well, we beat the Chargers, correct. The Chargers also went out and I think got the best hire available at the offensive coordinator spot, which is going to help their team significantly. Yes, you beat the Texans. I believe the Texans, I believe they'll fix some of that offense. Maybe not. Maybe we'll call that one a draw. You beat the Broncos in Denver with Jarrett Stidham as quarterback, not with Bo Nix. I think there's a pretty good reason to see the but on all of those. There's still plenty of time in the offseason for all of these teams to get better. But again, as we talk so much about the schedule, I will just remind everybody, when you look at the schedule that they have to play next year, the Patriots schedule is brutal. They draw the NFC North, so they're going to get a bunch of good teams there. They draw the AFC West. They're going to get a bunch of good teams there. And then they're going to get a lot of good teams across the board because of their schedule and the way it broke out from where they finished in their division. So life gets tougher for the Patriots next year. I'm consistent. Go back and watch what I said about the Commanders a year ago. Life got tougher for the Commanders, and I said even though I think they're a better football team than they were, their record would be less than. I think the Patriots are the same thing. They've got to make a lot of improvements just to maintain where they are right now. Plenty of time in the offseason to figure out who New England's going to be. Coming up, we got you all of the Olympic previews and predictions and analyses you could ever ask for. That man, Apolo Ohno, absolute legend, going to join us next. We'll talk to him about everything he's seeing in Italy.
One school that's doing some work in there right now, very quietly, is the Florida Gators. At the time of us taping this, Florida is sitting there with a top 10 class. And you're like, JD, wait a second. Florida's got a top 10 class? Who have they added? And I think this portal class in general for John Summerall is a good reflection of just the overall vibe, attitude, persona of what you're going to get from John Summerall during his time in Gainesville.
And I've been thinking about the Denver Nuggets here for a little bit. Jamal Murray's gonna have to carry the torch during this program. Like I know it's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air looking around and no furniture around, but hey, he's gonna have to figure it out. What I will say that helps Denver is the return of this version of Aaron Gordon. And I very specifically mean this version of Aaron Gordon. And I know you might have a twinge of concern that he may do too much, but it was good early and they need it now.
Have you had a chance to kind of unpack all of it?
Yeah, I don't know that I have yet. I think it's just another reminder of how wild pro football can be. I've lived it so many times. I mean, I think going back a little over 2 years ago when I tore my Achilles to now, there's been a lot of curveballs and a lot of change. And I was told a long time ago in pro football, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm reminded of that time and again.
How long do you feel like that window is with Lamar, though?
I think you can get 2 more years of Lamar as a locked-in top 5 guy. And then I think after that is when it's like, okay, maybe he ages to more being a top 12 guy, which is still good. Maybe more of a tier 2 guy in my brain. And then it kind of ages from there. Russ went from like a tier 2 guy that fell off to a tier 3, tier 4 guy. You're going to have that drop off at some point in your career.
Italy storms to gold in the short track speed skating mixed team relay. Latest results are out. The U.S. gets off to a rocky start in the mixed relay team. They wipe out in the semifinals, miss a chance to medal. Joined now by a speed skating legend, 8-time Olympic medalist Apolo Ohno. Apollo, really appreciate your time. Thanks. Stoddard fell in this one in the 500 meter event, I should say. So what's going on right there?
I think 2 things. One, the ice condition is not what they're normally used to. So every Olympic Games, everyone comes in with their coats. It's very warm. The underneath the ice compressors is a specific set temperature. The Ice Meister is what they call them. They control these elements really well. But with all the new lights, all the Olympic activity and more focus, everything changes. And as a result, this is also Stoddard's, I think, something that she just has seen earlier today. She rushed, right? And that's the one thing the Olympics does is you could be world champion, World Cup champion. When you come to the games, there's just this added layer of both expectation and pressure. And if I was going to simplify, she rushed her pushing, right? She didn't need to attack too early, meaning she didn't need to make that pass. And then she has a little bit of a pattern where she swings her right arm. And when she's in control, she's very fast. She's very explosive. But a little bit too hard of a swing, her upper body shifts, which causes the rotation of the body. And that's exactly what happened. So psychologically, this is a really challenging point, right? Because you've got almost 3 falls back to back in the same day. I think this team would have actually medaled at least bronze, maybe silver, and possibly even gold if they had made it to the final. But that's all done, right? They can no longer control those components. So she now has to shift her psychology. She has to reset this going forward. And I talked to the head coach right after the competition, and I went up to him. I said, like what happened? Like what's going on? And she didn't even want to skate because she had fallen earlier. They had that kind of what I call the golden horseshoe, where other athletes early in the race also fell, so they were able to kind of advance to that next round. But it's psychologically excruciating, right? To know that you had this incredible opportunity, and when time came and the pressure was there, you either overreacted or you tried basically too hard. And that's exactly what happened to cause her to shift back her body weight onto her heels, and then she went down.
What's fascinating to me about so many winter sports is the conditions aren't necessarily controlled. You can try and control them as much as possible, but the climate in Milan is inherently warmer than maybe a Beijing, which is much colder and much windier. So when you bring up ice conditions, to me, ice is ice. It's cold. It's hard. Ice is ice. But how do the ice conditions contribute so much to the difference between a gold and wiping out?
So the ice conditions are specifically for short track speed skating are really, really, really important. Some athletes skate very well on what we would consider to be soft ice, meaning a little bit warmer temperature. The first thing that I noticed when I walked into the rink this morning was I noticed after they were zamboning the ice, when you see them pouring that kind of hot water as it's dragging across the ice surface and they're shaving underneath, the water was not drying as fast as it normally does. It was just staying wet. So that just signified to me that either if the compressors underneath are actually the right temperature, and those are the metrics that are working, but on top it's not drying. And then in the other part is they pour water in the corners of the ice. Now that just does two things. It does, number one, it helps self-heal the ice. So you see the athletes that are putting their arms down as they go around those corners. That's the highest amount of pressure is at the apex. The water is supposed to help that as the grooves get cut through the ice on each corner. It's almost like a self-healing mechanism by pouring a little bit of that warm water through the corners. And the second part is it helps the athletes grip. So it provides an additional layer of grip as they torque really hard on that right leg. So people always ask, like, why are they pouring water in the corners? And I think here's the reality about the Olympic Games, right? Is our team trains and lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, that ice arena in Kearns is amazing. It's the fastest ice on earth. It is exceptional ice quality. They have really got it dialed in. Many world records have been broken there for both long track and short track speed skating. But just like you said, the Olympic Games is volatile, right? Italy has the hometown advantage. They've been training on this ice rink. They're used to this soft ice, and perhaps maybe they even want to have this soft ice. And so for athletes, the heavier and more explosive and stronger that you are as an athlete, if you're a power skater like I used to be many years ago, these types of ice conditions are not conducive. Like, I wouldn't love these ice conditions. I would still try to get the job done. But at the end of the day, this plays a really big role. So you will typically see lighter athletes or those who are used to skating on these types of ice conditions and do better. They even change the equipment now. So speed skating, for those that don't know, we skate in the 17 or 18-inch long blade. It's only a millimeter thick, and there's actually a curve in that blade. There's a rocker like you see in hockey, right? The rounded part, and that curve is bent on the actual blade. And that's allowing the athlete, as they go around and that bent blade comes over at a pressure, and they place pressure on that blade, the bend slightly starts to compress out, but there's still enough to help them curve and whip around that corner. So the ice conditions plays a big role. But at the end of the day, this is what the Olympic Games are about, right? You prepare for the uncertainty. Short track is a masterclass in stoicism, right? Whatever you think that you can prepare for, at some point you have to just disregard the things, for example, the ice conditions. Everyone's skating in the same ice condition. So either you can be sensitive about it, or you can step up and say, I need to adjust, I need to pivot, I need to figure out how I can still perform to my absolute best. One thing I want to note is that this woman right here, who's on the screen, Kristen Santos Griswold, has been battling injuries for the past 12 months, was skating out of her mind, was skating so well, explosive, strong, doing really well. And then she started to have these injuries, which is this thing called this compartment syndrome. So the front part of her calf, I guess there's like this small compartment, like capsule, which fills up and kind of almost like a pump. And it was so excruciating for her. This girl couldn't even do laps about 4 months ago. She wasn't even able to skate. So the fact that she's here, what I saw today of her performing very well, she's skating the best that I've seen her skate in the last year. So she is on track. I think she's got a really good shot at winning a medal in the coming days. But this American team has to reset. I mean, this is a devastating moment. They performed well in the past. They've been able to medal. And as with every fall, right, it's not like sometimes some of the athletes can say, well, next year I'll go to the games. It just doesn't work that way. They got to wait 4 years. And depending on how old you are, that's a lot of internal psychological processing to go if you're just kind of alone thinking about this process. So the inner game is really important, obviously, for the Olympics.
You mentioned that's all I think about is you work your whole life to get to the Olympics. You want to set the best record of you want your best time ever. You want to have your best day, and then the ice conditions get in the way. It's I cannot imagine being able the mental fortitude it takes. I do want to talk to you about a couple of the other skaters. Long track skater Jordan Stolz, obviously a superstar at this point. What makes him special?
Jordan Stolz is the greatest long track speed skater to have skated since 1980, the great Eric Heiden, who did something that no other human thought was possible. Eric Heiden won 5 gold medals in a single Olympic Games. He swept every single distance. That would be like Usain Bolt winning the marathon. While he may look good for the first 25 seconds, most likely he's not going to be there towards the end, right? So this kid is special. Not only does he technically skate with incredible grace and transfer of energy. Speed skating is all about power and energy transfer. It's a lot of in the hip movement. You see them putting their arms in their back sometimes. That's to conserve energy, but it's also all about the body position. And he skates beautifully. On top of that, he's like a genetic specimen. I mean, this kid in the weight room is a freak of nature. Like, he's incredible. And the third thing, the most important thing, is this kid loves to win. He's hungry. He is good enough. He knows the pressure is on. So, look, the curtain is ripped open. The world championships, the World Cups, the world records that he's broken all year long, they're here, and they provide ancillary ammunition. But now this kid has to go out there and perform. I think he can do it. I was with his parents yesterday at the Winter House here in Milan, spending some time with them. And I asked him, I said, how does Jordan feel? Like, does he feel good? And his mom says, well, he skated the best 800 meters that he's ever skated in his life. So what that means is his top end speed is phenomenal. This is a kid who trains in Milwaukee. Our team trains in Salt Lake City. I think I mentioned that to you. The major difference here is, like the other great skater, Shawnee Davis, also used to train in Milwaukee. What do we know about the Pettit Center's ice? The Pettit Center's ice is a little bit like the ice conditions here. So if you're used to crappy ice conditions, your body has been used to basically training like with a drag suit. Remember when we would see those swimmers and they'd wear those like extra clothing to make it like, it's basically just a drag suit? Or you see a track and field athlete wearing like pants that are like baggy. That's really just to create more wind resistance. So this guy has been doing that time in and time out. If Jordan has an average day, he should dominate the 1,000. He should dominate the 1,500. He has to have a good day to win the 500. The mass start is crazy. The Dutch will try to probably play a couple of different games. They may decide to send a couple of skaters, meaning they'll just create the rabbit and the chase type moment to force Jordan to chase them down and maybe waste some energy. And then we've got the men's team pursuit, who as a unit has been special. So technically, this kid could be coming out of these games with at least 3 golds, maybe 5. Now, I don't want to jinx anything. Pressure is real. We got a great picture here from Utah, who skated an incredible race yesterday. That was really breathtaking to be able to hold on to that in the lead. But this kid's special. I like him. He's hungry. He's got that fire, you know, like when we call it like that killer instinct. And it's been a while since I've seen an athlete have that kind of killer instinct, actually since Johnny Davis.
It is so fascinating, you know, the psychological aspect of being Olympian. It's not just the physical gifts you have. It's also, like you said, having that just winning mentality, that killer instinct.
Yeah.
And we also learned that Jordan and his older sister Hannah actually fell in love with the sport from watching you in Vancouver in 2010.
Yeah.
So what is that like for you, that you've inspired this generation of athletes?
It's humbling. It's very humbling. Look, I love the Winter Olympic Games. And Jordan probably felt this as they were going through the opening ceremonies. It's an amazing experience, right? To be able to shift all of your energy from me to we. When you walk in those opening ceremonies, that's the shift. That's this powerful moment where you're like, wow, this feels bigger than me. I thought this was all about what I have to do. And then you've got that beautiful flag that you represent. And there's millions of people back home that you've never met that are cheering for you. So this is not about me. This is their moment. And I'm doing my best to channel whatever manifestation I can so they can have the best and the greatest races of their lives. And this is their moment. This is their special moment. This is when your body will never ask your mind in the middle of chaos or when something goes wrong, hey, like, what do you want to do? No, it's going to default to what you have practiced the most. And so we will see that on race day. Now the pressure's here. Now is when it matters. The mechanics are all the same, right? Same ice rink, same, the ice conditions. They've had multiple different versions of this all over the world in the past 4 years. This is all about putting these pieces together, and I think they can. But for those that have skated because of me, I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, short track and long track speed skating, these are not big sports in the United States. Like, I grew up wanting to play football. I wanted to be a running back, right? My dad said no. I said, what about boxing? He said, absolutely not. And I mean, he threw me on in the water, on the softest stuff on earth, which was swimming. And then I found love with the sport of short track speed skating. And so sport saved me. It changed my life. And for all of these athletes, I just know that it's got so many powerful life lessons that when they leave and they retire, these will be embedded into their DNA for the remainder of their lives. And it's a special moment. So I'm here. I mean, the energy, we just came from short track today. The energy was crazy. It was just I was there with people that had never seen it before. The Italian team obviously won on hometown ice, which was very special. All these things are really, really cool. So it is a different games, right? The energy here is a lot different because of the 6 different venues. And so, the Italians, they like to do things their way. And sometimes not always at the speed that maybe probably we Americans would like to have that precision. But everything has been amazing so far. And the racing and the competition, it makes me feel like, oh, Apolo, you got one more? And then I look in the mirror and I remind myself, I don't want to get back in that racing suit. So very, very quick, like a fact check.
Oh, come on. You're thinking about it. Come on. What's the hard, because you mentioned that it's separated out, it's different. What's the key to mental focus in all of this, especially long track? Because we spend so much time watching the broadcast and they're talking about every single lap and your speed in every single lap. And I keep thinking about the self-control you have to know when to push, when to not. What's the key in that? How do you manage the mental fortitude to make sure that you're running the right race for you in each race?
Well, in long track, it depends on when your pair goes. So if there's a really fast time that was posted by another athlete, now you have a target. Now you know what you have to beat. So if you're last pair to go and you know the lap times that they skated, it's a really great way to know I need to beat that, or I'm able to kind of coast here in this kind of half quarter lap. It gives you a little bit of data to process and assimilate. Now, if you're going early, it's just all about just setting a time that you think no one else in the world can match. The most important thing for any athlete that comes to Olympic Games, because it's so unique, the whole experience is unique. The traveling back and forth from the venues, the ice rinks, all the media, they don't experience this type of thing. They do at a much smaller scale during the World Championships. But when they're here, everything is new. And by the way, nothing goes right at an Olympic Games. I'll give you an example. You'll show up in the greatest shape of your life, ready to skate the greatest race of your life. And all of a sudden, a little bird in your brain will say, oh my God, my hamstring. Did I just tweak my hamstring? Or it'll say like, oh, my throat. Why do I have a little bit of a sniff? Maybe I'm getting sick. Maybe I trained too hard. All these weird things that typically never happen. Oh my God, my equipment. There's something wrong with my skate when there is nothing wrong with your skate. So I call it like these phantom voices that don't really exist. I just think that they're testing your resolve to see if you can do a few things. One, can you maintain the consistency of routine that you've always done, regardless of the importance of the race? So if this is a club race, or this is the World Championships, or this is the big day at the Olympics, your preparation of your warm-up, the mental game that's here, the space between your ears, how you communicate with yourself, how you prepare, and you got to figure out what is the best way that you can get into the zone. So we saw that, right? We saw that with my Seahawks. They got into the zone. They were pretty dominant. They looked very strong. But this is what it comes down to, right? There's always going to be these amazing distractions throughout the entire games. And those that are patient, calm, alert, and dynamic are those that they show up. Breezy Johnson did it in the downhill. Like, people had counted her out. This woman had gone through insane injuries, insane challenges. You have to have this conviction and belief even when the spotlight wasn't on her, right? I always use her as a great example. The spotlight was on the great Lindsey Vonn, and for good reason. Lindsey is just an incredible, savage beast of a competitor. She's amazing. And Breezy has had multiple injuries, but you still, as an athlete, have to maintain this conviction and this belief that your time will come, that there is a chance that you can win, even when you don't get the spotlight, even when everyone else doesn't believe in you. There's got to be this internal thing. That's why we love sports so much. That's why the games are so special. And so we're getting some glimpses of that here on the ground here in Milan. It's cool. Like I was there, I had goosebumps the whole time. I have some of my teammates are here in town from 20 years ago. One of the guys, Rusty Smith, who I've won multiple medals with, he's here with his family, and we're watching. And so this is like a reunion for me. But make no mistake, I want the Americans to win. I deeply want them to win. And there's a part of me that just wants to sit them down sometimes and be like, take a breath. This is your time. Don't rush anything. Yeah.
Well, congratulations to your Seahawks. And then most importantly, thanks for all the years we're all fans of the Winter Olympics on this show. We're massive fans, and you're a huge part of why. So it's an honor to get you to hang out with us. We're excited we get to do it more throughout the course of this. Thanks for hanging out with us. Stay safe out there and enjoy a little bit of time in Italy.
I will. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much.
So much great stuff from Apolo Ohno. He will join us throughout as we get through these incredible Winter Olympics. Coming up, Madness in Charlotte. That's a basketball game and a brawl all at once. We'll tell you about it next.
Penn State has imported Iowa State. It's the best way I could explain it. Penn State has now taken Rocco Beck. They took RB1. They took wide receiver 1. They took 3 offensive linemen. I detest that this is how college football works at the moment, but it's the way it works at the moment. And that is, when you take a head coach, part of the thinking behind hiring the head coach is who he can bring with him. And in Matt Campbell's case, it was basically whoever he wants.
I'm very fascinated to see which direction they go here, because I think that Roman, this is the deal with him. He's not terrible. He's not offensive as an offensive coordinator, but he can get you to a certain point. You need somebody else to get you to the next point. I think he's done a good job with Herbert, getting him to run more and getting him to push the ball down the field. Now I'd like to see, someone kind of just, again, give him some more quicker options. That's the type of stuff I'd like to see from the next coach.
Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gahn, that needs to be resolved, right? Hamzat Shemaiah versus Sean Strickland. But I will accept Hamzat Shemaiah versus Fluffy Hernandez. If Fluffy beats Sean Strickland, I'll take either of those. Here's another one of my, but you accept these as secondary.
100%.
Armin Sarukian versus UFC lightweight champion. We cannot just keep having Armin doing grappling matches and eating and all this stuff. He
I'm
must
kind of okay
fight
with
for
it.
No, I'm not.
No,
I know you love it.
You get the first pick in the underrated player draft. Who are you taking?
Jalen Duren has never made an All-Star game. He's never made an All-NBA team. He's gotten so much better as a scorer this year. Jalen Duren is like a legit All-Star this year. And so because everybody talks about the Detroit situation like it's trash and Cade Cunningham, I'm going to say he's still a little bit underrated, and he's my number 1 pick.
The Celtics are sending Jayson Tatum to practice with their G League affiliate, the Maine Celtics. The team announced Tatum will be recalled to Boston after that practice to continue his rehab from a torn Achilles. This is the first step to possibly ramping up to potential return to action. Unbelievable. We're even at this point. Can't imagine what it feels like to be hanging out in Portland, Maine with the Maine Celtics, and suddenly you're practicing with Jayson Tatum. But that's where we are. So, on this show, we love to do something we call shoot, pass, or dribble. We're going to give you a take, and then we're going to figure out shoot. Yes, you're all in on it. Pass it. Nope, you want nothing to do with it. Or dribble. I need some more time to figure it out. So, Tatum returning to the Celtics would change everything. Caroline Fenton, shoot, pass, or dribble. What do you think?
I'll shoot on that. I will shoot on that with a little bit of hesitation. I shoot because I believe that Jayson Tatum makes every single team in the NBA better. So if Jayson Tatum comes back and is 100% Jayson Tatum, which is a big if, coming off of an Achilles less than a year removed from an Achilles tear, then I think that, yes, all of a sudden the Celtics become legitimate championship contenders. Now, the reason why I can't say with 100% certainty that it changes everything is because the Celtics are the second best team in the East right now. That if you told me today, pre-Jayson Tatum returning, that the Celtics would find themselves in the NBA Finals, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I would not be surprised if the Celtics were as currently constructed, and with that man playing the way that he is in Jaylen Brown, I wouldn't be surprised that the Celtics would be the team that come out of the East. Now, what it changes is how I view a legitimate championship contender, because I would take OKC over the Celtics in a series final right now. I would take the Nuggets over the Celtics right now. Like, I would take the West, the field in the West over the Celtics right now as currently constructed. But what Jayson Tatum would do was change my perspective of a championship series. The only thing, though, here, Fitzy, is I'm so nervous about this. I'm worried about this. I don't necessarily agree with Jayson Tatum coming back, because the last thing that I want to see is Jayson Tatum injure his Achilles further, Jayson Tatum injure something else because he's not 100% and rushed back in order to be available for the postseason. I always will err on the side of caution. If I were in the Celtics facility, I wouldn't rush Jayson Tatum back, but like I said, he makes any team in the league better.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I dribble on this take, because, look, I think the Celtics right now have every bit the chance of anybody in the East of getting to the NBA Finals, which is also a statement to how great this season has been and how far ahead of schedule they are. But realistically, for me, the most concerning part about this is the long-term future of Tatum. So for me to buy that this changes everything, I got to buy that, A, he's going to be fully healthy. I got to buy, B, that he comes in and he's immediately in game shape and it doesn't cause any disruption to the way the Celtics run their team and their offense. And then I got to buy, C, most importantly, he remains healthy. To me, the concern we're going to have every single minute of every single game is every step he takes. And if there's any risk, it was just a few weeks ago on this show, we were talking about the news that was breaking that Tatum might just shut it down for the entire season. So it's not that long ago we thought that was a possibility. I don't think that report was an error. The next step in his rehab is to send him to the G League. I don't believe that means it's inevitable he's going to play this year. And if he does play this year, man, I am nervous the entire time because the Celtics have a much, you know what changes everything? If Jayson Tatum re-injures himself and he's gone for next year. Now we're having a total different career change conversation. So that's what makes me nervous. Let's keep going in the NBA. We'll do this. Shoot, pass, or dribble. Yesterday, we found out Steph Curry would miss the All-Star game. Currently needs a replacement. Harden and the Cavs pull off a great late-game comeback. Harden money with a big shot. Looking brilliant. Shoot, pass, or dribble. Send the beard back to Intuit for the All-Star game. What say you?
I'll dribble on that because does James Harden deserve to be an All-Star? Yeah. Yes, he does. He has had an all-star caliber season. So for that, yes, I think that he deserves to be recognized as such. But the reason why I'm not totally 100% shooting on that is because I don't think James Harden cares. Frankly, I don't think James Harden wants to be an all-star. I think James Harden's probably looking ahead to the all-star break and saying, I'm going to go enjoy Cabo. I'm going to go enjoy Jamaica. You guys, have fun in LA. Have fun at the all-star game that nobody cares about. Nobody's going to watch. I'll be good on the beach. So does he deserve to be recognized for what he's done this season? 1,000% yes, but I don't think he's losing any sleep over it.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I'm passing on this entire thing because, frankly, if I'm Harden, I don't want a sympathy invite. I keep saying this, guys. Athletes have egos, and there's nothing worse than, if I pull up social media and I see that Caroline's hanging out with everybody else, and then I text her, I'm like, well, what about me? And then she's like, oh, yeah, I just forgot. Come on down. No, I'm out. I don't want a sympathy invite. Harden doesn't want a sympathy invite to go back to the Clippers. He wants to hang out on a beach. So I pass on this all day long. If he was an all-star, he should have already been an all-star. He was already playing at a lights-out level. They didn't put him in. I don't know what changes, even though he's just continuing in Cleveland what he was already doing with the Clippers. How about this one last night?
I would
at
never
a basketball
do that.
game. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. See, that's why we're great teammates.
You're always invited.
Thank you. All right, how about this? A wild brawl broke out last night. Pistons-Hornets. Who knew Pistons-Hornets was going to turn into that thing? Punches thrown, several players involved, suspensions clearly coming. It did spill into the seats. I do want to point out here that this got out of control. Nobody was injured. Nobody was hurt. So the question is shoot, pass, or dribble. A brawl every once in a while can be good for the NBA. What do you think?
I'm not just shooting on that, Fitz. In the spirit of this fight, I'm punching that right in the face. Yes, I do think the brawls can be good for the sport because you know what? We're talking about it. We're talking about the drama. We're talking about the intrigue. And now I was scrolling through social media last night. I saw so many people saying, give me a Pistons-Hornets playoff series. Could you imagine telling yourself that a couple of years ago that you're going to be rooting for a Pistons-Hornets playoff series? Feels inconceivable just a couple of years ago, but this year it makes sense. I mean, that game was nasty. That game was physical. That game was tough. And that was just on the court playing actual basketball, independent of the fight. And then you got this epic brawl last night. I think it's good for the sport. I think drama is good for the sport. I think controversy is good for the sport in any sport. Also, I would like to point out that we need to make sure that we're keeping each other safe, that we're keeping all of the fans safe, because it did spill over a little bit into the fans that were sitting courtside. So we want to make sure that everybody is keeping themselves safe. But a little bit of this, absolutely. Sign me up for it. We're all gluttonous for a little bit of violence.
This also speaks to just how much the world has changed, because certainly there was an entire era, not just the Malice at the Palace, that's the most famous, but there was an entire era where two players going at each other in the NBA would have been huge breaking news, and everybody would have used it as some sort of narrative, right? Like now we're in a spot where, man, it just feels good that people care about a regular season game. For everybody that says that nobody cares, Bedlam at the Spectrum, got it, right? Like now we care.
Bedlam at the Spectrum.
That's
Yes.
Caroline Fenton's. I stole it from her, by the way. I stole that straight up
Love
from Caroline.
that.
She gets all the credit.
You can
But
take
yeah, to me, the passion, like guys caring about the regular season, again, since nobody got hurt, it didn't spill into the fans in a way that the fans were impacted. I do say this, Isaiah Stewart, you see that, wanted to fight so bad, didn't even bother to take the ice wraps off his knees, came sprinting off the bench. I think that we are going to see a thunder of the gods penalty to him in this one. This will be his 5th suspension of some sort for a fight in the NBA. I think we're looking at 20-plus games. So let's see
He was not going
how
to be
the
held
punishment
back.
comes down. Oh, yeah, no.
He was not.
You know what?
He wasn't going to let
I'm
anybody hold
in.
him
Let
back.
him go.
And there were moments where assistants were trying to hold him back, so he ran backwards, ran all the way around the rest of the big pile of the fight just to find a different angle where an assistant coach wasn't able to hold him back. I appreciate the dedication to trying to get his.
I love the fact I've seen a bunch of clips
at
of
him.
this on social media where they've used pro wrestling entrance music for this. No, get me like Frozen, let
So
it go.
good.
Just let him go. Let him go. Let him go. He's just got to go out there and get those punches out. It was a brutal
He looks
scene.
like he's wearing
the
Crocs.
NBA, I'm sure. I mean, it is. Would you judge him if he was? I do like the ice.
No.
Can you punch somebody
Sensible
that
footwear.
has their knees ice? Like it's a little unk to punch somebody who's like wobbling out to the fight with their knees ice. Said is the old man in the room. Let's get one more shoot, pass, or dribble on this. How about this? LeBron last night was asked after the Lakers lost to the Thunder to compare, and he said, "You want me to compare us to OKC? That's a championship team. We're not." Shoot, pass, or dribble. Like you see it there. We're not. We can't sustain energy and effort for 48 minutes, and they can. That's why they won a championship. Shoot, pass, or dribble. LeBron's right. The Lakers have 0% chance of winning a title this year. What do you think?
I'll shoot that. Yes. Yes, I think LeBron is telling the truth. I don't think LeBron is trying to do anything cute just to make headlines or to aggregate on social media. I think that LeBron is telling the truth. 100% shoot on a 0% chance for this version of the Lakers to win a championship. There had to be a perfect formula for the Lakers to be able to compete in the West. And that is a healthy Luka that could put up 30 plus points on any given night. Now Luka's health is in question. You needed LeBron to be playing at a certain level and on the court consistently enough. He hasn't been on the court consistently enough. There are all of these things that had to go perfectly for the Lakers to even be in the conversation as the same caliber of team of OKC or Denver or even San Antonio, and that's not coming to fruition. So yeah, I will agree with LeBron. I will shoot on that 1000%. The Lakers aren't sniffing a championship.
I was debating on First Take a few years ago about the Lakers, and I said they had 0% chance at a championship in a year that they did not win the championship. And the funny thing is Lakers fans came at me repeatedly saying, I didn't know anything. The Lakers were going to be just fine. They were built for the playoffs. All right. That was then. This is now. The take hasn't changed. If you tell me the take and my shoot, pass, or dribble on it of LeBron saying we're not a championship team, you take that take, you crumple it up, you hand it to the GOAT, Michael Jordan, and then Michael Jordan from the foul line does the dunk of it. I'm dunking this take. I'm not just shoot, passing, or dribbling it. The Lakers have 0% chance, as built right now, of winning the Larry O.B. this year. It's not going to happen. And, I know LeBron wants to talk about energy. I'll take that word energy and I'll take it to depth. I keep saying this, that draft, develop, depth. It's the 3 Ds of how you win an NBA championship. There ain't nothing that the Lakers are going to do to fix all 3 of those Ds. This season, OKC is not just better. OKC is deeper. The most of the West at this point is not just better. Most of the West is ... deeper. The Lakers are not built to win a championship. There is 0% chance they're going to win a championship. All we're going to do is suffer through the rest of this year where we continually talk about a team that isn't really elite, but we try and make them elite because they have elite stars. That does not make them an elite basketball team. The Lakers will not win the championship this year. Now, hopefully over the summer, they can surround Luka with what they need to surround Luka with. And I'm just saying Luka because I don't really care about the rest of the pieces to get them to a title. But the Lakers are dead in the water as LeBron James. LeBron James, you know what? He's going to be doing the same thing at the NBA Finals as the rest of us, watching it on TV. Lakers got 0 chance. All right. From the NBA back to the NFL, speaking of the playoffs, did we just watch the most electric playoffs, or was it missing that special something? We'll tell you about it next.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to this.
Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knipple and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knipple. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70. And then like the air went out of the ball for a month. And it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
Well, it's over. Let's never do a season like this again, okay? Need Mahomes and Lamar back in the playoffs next year. Hell, a healthy Bo Nix and Burrow would be great, even that from Scott on Twitter. And that echoes a sentiment, frankly, some of the people, even on this show, have had, as we've talked about the playoffs that we just watched. And it's a real question, Caroline, with no Lamar, with no Joe, with no Patrick Mahomes. We talked a lot going into the playoffs about the opportunity that presented for somebody like Josh Allen. Didn't turn out to be that way. Instead, we get Drake May versus Sam Darnold in the Super Bowl. And now, particularly on the AFC side, there's this overwhelming sentiment. Do you feel like the AFC playoffs were just a little bit too meh because we didn't have some of the biggest brands at the quarterback position in all of sports?
Kinda. Yeah. Like, I do. The best games in the AFC postseason, I believe, were Buffalo-Jacksonville. Back and forth, Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence traded shot for shot, touchdown for touchdown in the fourth quarter, came down to the final few seconds, came down to a Trevor Lawrence interception. Excuse me. That's the kind of thing that you want in postseason games. And then I think Buffalo-Denver was an awesome, epic game. Outside of that, what did it for you? Was it Texans-Patriots when we got to see C.J. Stroud throw 4 interceptions? Was it, Patriots-Chargers when we got to see the Chargers not even be able to move the football? Almost impressive how little offense they had. Like, there were just, when I look back on the postseason, the games that stand out to me were Rams, Seahawks. That felt like a very, Super Bowl caliber type of game. I think about, just so many games that I felt like in the NFC side of things that were so much more back and forth, so much more exciting to watch. Whereas the only games that stood out to me on the AFC side of things were the 2 games that a superstar quarterback were participating in. And that was both Buffalo Bills games that we saw in the postseason. So, I mean, save it, football nerds, when you tell me, well, defenses are fun to watch. No, it's not. Okay? Save it. We are all gluttonous for points. Offense is sexy. We didn't get that from the AFC side of things. So, yeah, I do think the AFC playoffs kind of sucked.
Well, I mean, look, the NFC side, you're right, gave us more drama. In fact, if you look back at the bracket that got us to the Super Bowl, out of the 6 games, 5 of the 6 games were decided by 1 score. Like, that's incredible in the NFC. The only one that wasn't was the Seahawks' absolute drubbing of the 49ers, which was still a matchup we were weirdly excited for. That game 41-6. So certainly it's easy to look at it and say the AFC didn't stack up with the drama of the NFC, which kind of matches the way the year felt, frankly. The AFC didn't feel like it had as much quality football as the NFC. But I still do look back at it and say, okay, the Bills-Jags was a great game. I loved Bills Broncos. I thought that was a great game. I loved the AFC Championship game in the snow. I thought the AFC Championship game in the snow, as ugly as it was a delight for me to watch. The thing for me is this: if you only rely on Mahomes and Jackson and your major stars, you never make new stars. To me, there was an opportunity in the AFC, an opportunity that C.J. Stroud didn't take advantage of because he played really poorly, right? An opportunity that Drake May did try to take advantage of, right? I think going into next year, our narratives and our interest level in certain quarterbacks change based on what we see in the playoffs. We're going to have a different conversation about Trevor Lawrence going into next year's season because, man, we're looking at it saying Trevor Lawrence hasn't done it in the playoffs, right? C.J. Stroud, suddenly we're questioning whether or not he should even be a starting quarterback because it looks so bad for much of the season for the Texans. I think there's relevance to that. And Drake May certainly got more platform. Even though we didn't play well in the playoffs, people that didn't watch Drake May all year suddenly heard about Drake May. If you don't have new stars step into these holes, you end up with Tiger Woods in golf, where it's a one-athlete sport. That's the NFL may never have that problem. But I honestly found a lot of drama and joy in the entirety of these teams. Like, I think the Patriots defense was incredible to watch throughout the entire postseason run. I think watching Josh, obviously, but watching the Bills have their sort of meltdown moment against the Broncos was incredible. Yeah, I wish we would have had Bo Nix in the AFC Championship game. I truly wish we would have had Bo Nix. But the drama of trying to watch Sean Payton make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what with Jarrett Stidham at the quarterback position in a snowstorm, that was electric to me. So I don't really think there was a problem. Yeah, if you love points, it wasn't the sexiest AFC, but to me, I enjoyed it. I look back at this year's playoffs and think, man, that was a fun run that got us there. I don't look back at it like a few years ago when we were watching backup quarterback after backup quarterback saying this is dreadful. I think we're watching young quarterbacks still try and earn their spot as superstars in this league, and that's interesting to me.
I hear you on the AFC Championship game, but I think it was more of the intrigue of the fact that it was the AFC Championship game. Like, if you give me Broncos, Patriots, or Seahawks, Rams, I'm taking Seahawks, Rams 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. If you give me Bears, Packers over Patriots, Chargers, I'm taking Bears, Packers. If you give me Bears, Rams, that game was awesome. Or Patriots, Texans, I'm taking Bears, Rams. That if you just give me two options when you go throughout the course of the postseason, if you give me, okay, this NFC matchup or that AFC matchup, I'm taking the NFC matchup almost every single time. And I will go back to the most intriguing games that we saw in the AFC postseason came because it was Josh Allen and the Bills, because it was the storyline of, will Josh Allen break through? Will he get to a Super Bowl? The looming pressure that came with every single win, the pressure that came with no Mahomes, no Josh Allen, no Joe Burrow, none of those elite quarterbacks standing in his way. Like, that was the most intriguing storyline of the AFC postseason. And sure, yes, Patriots, Broncos in the snow, Sean Payton's ability, the chance that he could become the first coach ever to win a Super Bowl with two different organizations. Like, yes, all of those things were intriguing. But when it just came down to the actual football games, when you sat down and watched which were more intriguing, it was the NFC. And I don't even frankly think, Fitz, it was even close.
I agree with that, but I'm going to go back to something that's weird. Stick with me. We talked about this in San Francisco, you and I. As we were at dinner one night, we were talking about the fact that you love to make gumbo, right? And one of the things you said is great gumbo starts with a really good roux, right? I don't think sometimes I think what we forget is that a roux, like, that's the base that you make most sauces from, most gumbos, like it's a base, right? I think the base has to be laid. I would argue that if Mahomes and Jackson and Josh were in this year's playoffs, yet again, they'd suck all the oxygen out of the room because that's all anybody wants to talk about. Even if Mahomes misses it and it's Lamar and Josh and Joe, all we're going to talk about is who needs this Super Bowl the most, who's only got this window of opportunity, what's it mean for each of these guys in the future of their franchise. That's all we would talk about. What we got this year was a roux. Like, I think we got the base necessary to start having better conversations about Trevor Lawrence. I think we got the base necessary to see Bo Nix in a different light. Even though we didn't play in the AFC Championship game, the way Bo Nix being part of a team that beat Josh Allen means we are taking Bo Nix more seriously next year. When we have a conversation about what the Broncos are going to be going into next season, we are going to see them differently because we watched Bo Nix and that defense, but we watched Bo Nix take down Josh Allen. I think there's significance to that. So you're right. Right now, I think you're right. It would be more interesting if we were sitting here talking about the big brands that we love, but we don't get to the point that we fall in love with these guys unless they have these key moments. So weirdly, the Trevor Lawrence, the CJ Stroud, the Bo Nix that we got in this year's playoffs, particularly, they're the root. They're the foundation that we can now start to build better storylines on just because we were forced to pay more attention to them because it wasn't just Lamar, Josh, and Joe swallowing up all of the oxygen and all of the storylines from the playoffs.
It is refreshing to get new narratives. I always will go back to, like, I don't think football fans really know what they want because they talk about how sick and tired they are of the Alabamas winning every single national championship. But whenever Indiana's in the national championship, it's like boring. So, like, which do you want? So it is refreshing that we get new narratives. It's refreshing that we can talk about Trevor Lawrence and Bo Nix in some of these big time games. I am with you there. But the AFC's narratives were more interesting than the actual football. Whereas I think we got interesting and refreshing narratives on the NFC side of things. Like Sam Darnold winning a Super Bowl. That is such an awesome story. Like, that's the kind of story that you tell your kids whenever they're going through a really rough patch in PB ball. It's, look, Sam Darnold had a really tough go at it, but he persevered. Like, that's all the good that we want to, the good stories and the good lessons that we want to teach kids in sports. But we also got good football out of it as well.
You're not wrong. I mean, great point by you, because at the end of the day, you're right. Maybe I'm just a sucker for the storyline this year. I think the storyline.
We love a story.
Far eclipse. Yeah, it did far eclipse the actual outcomes. I will be genuinely curious as we on this show go into the summer and start getting ready over the summer to preview next season. I'll be genuinely curious how to see when we start to see how this year's playoffs impact next year's storylines. Plenty of time to get into that. But while we're trying to figure out how to fix things, let's fix the NBA next. Look, tanking is a problem. A great guest told us about it yesterday. We're going to figure out if we can fix it next.
One school that's doing some work in there right now, very quietly, is the Florida Gators. At the time of us taping this, Florida is sitting there with a top 10 class. And you're like, JD, wait a second. Florida's got a top 10 class? Who have they added? And I think this portal class in general for John Summerall is a good reflection of just the overall vibe, attitude, persona of what you're going to get from John Summerall during his time in Gainesville.
And I've been thinking about the Denver Nuggets here for a little bit. Jamal Murray's gonna have to carry a torch during this program. Like, it's I know it's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air looking around, and no furniture around, but hey, he's gonna have to figure it out. What I will say that helps Denver is the return of this version of Aaron Gordon. And I very specifically mean this version of Aaron Gordon. And I know you might have a twinge of concern that he may do too much, but it was good early and they need it now.
Have you had a chance to kind of unpack all of it?
Yeah, I don't know that I have yet. I think it's just another reminder of how wild pro football can be. I've lived it so many times. I mean, I think going back a little over 2 years ago when I tore my Achilles to now, there's been a lot of curveballs and a lot of change. And I was told a long time ago in pro football, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm reminded of that time and again.
How long do you feel like that window is with Lamar, though?
I think you can get 2 more years of Lamar as a locked-in top 5 guy. And then I think after that is when it's like, okay, maybe he ages to more being a top 12 guy, which is still good. Maybe more of a tier 2 guy in my brain. And then it kind of ages from there. Russ went from like a tier 2 guy that fell off to a tier 3, tier 4 guy. You're going to have that drop off at some point in your career.
Man, it's disgusting. It is a disgusting display of non-competitive natured organizations. I think it's awful for the game. I think it's awful for sports. something has to be done, man. It's when you're making it blatantly obvious like that, the league has to step in, man. It has to be a draft pick, some fines, something has to give. Yeah, because it's no good for the fans, man. Like, if anybody is cheated, it's the fans in these situations.
That's the great Kenyon Martin yesterday on our show talking about tanking, the issue with tanking, and how to try and fix it. And look, it's a difficult problem here, Caroline, and I know everybody wants a solution. The best laid plans of mice and men are paved with good intentions. Like, we can try and figure out solutions, but that's really hard to do when you actually look at it. Now, you see Duncan Smith, mid-game tanking is the most shameful thing in all of sports. Fines, suspensions, forfeiture of draft picks for this. I hear everybody. I just don't know the right way to police something that is so subjectively done that teams can get around so easily. Like, much like the attempt to fix load management, which OKC's finding themselves in trouble for right now, much like that attempt to fix load management, I don't know that there's a clear-cut way that you can solve the problem of tanking.
I keep going back to the drawing board to find a fair solution. But I also feel like every solution overcorrects to the point that you're punishing teams that are actually bad. Like, I've heard one potential solution of, teams are in contention for the lottery up until a certain point of the season, and then you actually get incentivized for winning. So you can kind of try and counteract tanking, but okay, you're bad to a certain point, and then you want to win, so you're not going to load manage, you're not going to hold star players out. You actually get incentivized for that. But what about teams that are banged up? What about teams that are actually just bad? So you're going to incentivize teams to win, but what about teams that can't actually win? Well, now you're actually hurting those teams, and it's counterintuitive to the whole spirit of the process of bad teams get higher picks. So I don't know what there is to do to fix tanking, because it's really kind of existed since the beginning of time. As long as you have a system that incentivizes the worst teams in the league, which I think I like that system. I like a system of everyone has an opportunity to get back to being in contention. The worst teams get the best pick, best teams get the worst pick. I like that construct. I like a construct of parity, of as even of a playing field as possible. But if you try and push back against tanking so hard, I think what you're going to find is the actual bad teams that deserve a top pick, that deserve a lottery pick, are going to get screwed over in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the lottery. I've never loved the lottery personally. I like just a straightforward draft process. But what's interesting to me is that I feel like we talk about tanking more in the NBA than every other sport combined. And one thing they say constantly in the NFL is that it's really difficult to get the actual 53 men on the field. You can't get them to tank. Tanking doesn't really exist in the NFL. I hear you, but what did we see at the end of this season? We saw my beloved Raiders just shutting everybody down. It may have forever fractured their relationship with Max Crosby. We'll find out. We saw the New York Giants shutting everybody down. We saw several teams just suddenly getting a ton of injuries in the last month of the season, not activating anybody. The Raiders-Giants game this year was a disgusting disgrace for the NFL if you believe that tanking is a problem. We've already forgotten about it. I mean, we don't care anymore. You and I each have covered the NHL for many years of our careers. It's not uncommon for NHL teams to shut literally everything down, and nobody complains about it. Major League Baseball, my God, the effort that they go through in baseball to make sure that they don't have to pay certain guys at the end of the year. So they're just shutting everybody down that they can to avoid contract incentives and to lose baseball games. And we don't usually sit here all year and say, oh, my God, they're tanking. It feels to me like the NBA is the one sport that we yell the most about for this, and I don't think there's a real solution. Even if you buy the one of the solutions that you mentioned, if we buy at a certain point, now you start winning games, and that will decide it. Well, everybody's just going to tank in the first half of the year to put themselves in the lottery conversation. Then player starters try and win the first pick. Like, there is no way around this. And it reminds me much of the conversation we had about load management, where suddenly we came up with a number. You have to play at least 65 games to be eligible for any of the postseason awards. You have to play 65 games to be eligible for MVP. And what have we seen out of that already? we've already seen that takes MVP candidates that clearly weren't load managing, but were in fact injured, completely out of the conversation for awards that have historical meaning and provide context to their careers. So I hear fans yell about it, but I guess my question is, is there a fix, and does it really matter? Why is it a problem for the NBA at a level that it isn't for other sports?
We see here Jazz coach Will Hardy. He was asked about how close he was to putting in Lauri Markkanen or Jaren Jackson Jr. in the game in the fourth quarter. He says, I wasn't. Like, he's not even trying to hide it. He's not even trying to, massage this quote to make it seem like they weren't doing something intentional. Maybe the one solution is the NBA investigating and penalizing teams that are so obviously and so clearly tanking. Like, I think that Jazz game was a perfect example of when you're benching Market and Jaren Jackson Jr., you were clearly trying to lose that game. So what punishments exist? What guardrails exist by the NBA to say, okay, if you do this, then we're going to take you out of the lottery. If you do this, we're going to fine you $500,000 for every game. A fine that is so exorbitant and so large that it actually kind of takes a hit. And you actually feel it, because I think sometimes some fines in the NBA, it's like, okay, well, whatever. The reward absolutely outweighs the fine. Is that in the future? Well, okay, do we want the NBA to exhaust resources in tanking intervention? Because we already don't really have a lot of, NBA officials taking the aspiration situation seriously, or at least I don't think they're taking it overly seriously. So how much do we really believe in the guardrails that exist in the NBA? Fair pushback to that. But I think that's the only way that you start to really deter tanking, is if you're doing it so obviously, then you're out of contention for a lottery pick, that we're not going to tolerate intentional tanking. But then you just create a system where they just do it under the table. They do it less obviously. Yeah. It's like a teenager, right? If you say, hey, yeah, right. And it's like, what are you going to do? Like, tell them to take a flu test? At that point, it's just, it's overbearing. At that point, you're exhausting league resources and in places where it might seem a little bit superfluous. It's like a teenager, right? You tell your teenager, hey, you can't drink. The teenager is not going to just not drink. They're just going to find ways to do it where you're not going to find out about it. So I think it's a difficult process. It's I think nearly impossible to stop.
Look, if you're a Jazz fan, as we just pulled up the Jazz, if you're a Jazz fan, they should be tanking. They should try to lose every single game they possibly can right now.
Yeah, they stink.
Suffer through it. They should be tanking. But again, I'm a Raiders fan. I wanted the Raiders to lose games at the end of the year because I wanted a shot at the first overall pick. I guess I'd ask the world, for anyone that sits here and screams about it, as we sit right now, the Jazz are 17-37. Does it really make a difference if the Jazz win 12 games or the Jazz win 20 games over the course to their fans? Does it really make a difference? Like this, the tanking yelling feels like it's everybody that's not a fan of that team is yelling at it. But if you're a Sacramento fan and you're 12-43 this year, is that tanking, or is that just because you absolutely suck, right? And even if it is tanking to amplify your suck a little bit, if it gets you one of the top 3 picks in this year's draft and one of those transcendent players, that's amazing. That's what you want. If the Indiana Pacers are choosing in a year where health was going to keep them down to tank, I guess I just wonder why everybody cares so much. And the argument is it's bad for the league. You know what's bad for the league? Having terrible teams year in and year out. It's just, that's the thing. At some point, the Utah Jazz being really bad is bad for the league. Being able to step on them every single year is bad for the league. Having them tank for a year, so what? I don't see the long-term consequence on this like it's going to be the thing that dismantles the NBA.
I think people are uncomfortable with teams taking advantage of the system, but teams will take advantage of any system and always have since the beginning of time. I think one thing that emphasizes it in the NBA, to your NFL example, in the NFL you play 17 games. So if you tank for weeks 17 and 18, it doesn't feel as obvious, whereas the Jazz are intentionally tanking and started doing it in January, well into February, and you're doing it over the course of 20 to 30 games. That feels more intentional, and that I think feels more emphasized over the course of several months versus the course of several weeks in the NFL.
That's probably fair. I go back to Major League Baseball and the NHL. Like, they're all doing it to some level. Part of the reason teams are tanking is because they absolutely want their shot at Kansas star Darren Peterson. We should let everybody know Kansas, without Peterson, knocks off an undefeated Arizona team last night, 82-78. But again, this is without Peterson, who missed due to illness at this point. He's missed a lot of basketball so far in this limited time he's going to have in college basketball. So he went out with the team for warmups but can't go. So flu-like symptoms here. But is availability sort of the problem here when you're talking about Peterson, Boozer, DeBonsa? They're three great prospects, Caroline, but Peterson, at least so far, seems to have an availability issue.
Yeah, it feels like Darren Peterson is going to the school of Ben Simmons' school of college load management. Now, Darren Peterson isn't full on Ben Simmons. That was a pretty, bold example of that. But it does feel like that a little bit. And I'm not going to act like I'm the, basketball evaluator aficionado, but all the people who are, the people who do evaluate basketball talent for a living, tell me that AJ DeBonsa and Cam Boozer and Darren Peterson can all be the answer and the solution for so many organizations in the NBA. Feels like the only weakness of those three is the availability of Darren Peterson. We talked to Kenyon Martin about that yesterday. He said it was really just kind of a pick your poison. If you need a big, well, then Cam Boozer probably is your guy. If you need a guy on the outside, AJ DeBonsa is your guy. So these guys all have different skill sets, but can be the solution for so many different organizations in the NBA.
I would just remind everybody, if you had 1 year in college, but you also knew that at the end of that year, you were about to be a generationally wealthy athlete, you might not be that focused on it. And no matter what we do, you might not be that focused. I just wonder how much focus he actually has on college basketball, knowing that he is 1 foot out the door to being a top 3 pick in the NBA draft. All eyes will be on Kansas, so 100%. Big win for them over Arizona, and a reminder that the NCAA tournament this year is going to be electric. It's already electric in Italy. We will get out there with one of the greats, Julia Mancuso, going to join us next. We'll get her thoughts on what's happening so far for Team USA.
Penn State has imported Iowa State. It's the best way I could explain it. Penn State has now taken Rocco Beck. They took RB1. They took wide receiver 1. They took 3 offensive linemen. I detest that this is how college football works at the moment, but it's the way it works at the moment. And that is, when you take a head coach, part of the thinking behind hiring the head coach is who he can bring with him. And in Matt Campbell's case, it was basically whoever he wants.
I'm very fascinated to see which direction they go here, because I think that Roman, this is the deal with him. He's not terrible. He's not offensive as an offensive coordinator, but he can get you to a certain point. You need somebody else to get you to the next point. I think he's done a good job with Herbert, getting him to run more and getting him to push the ball down the field. Now I'd like to see, someone kind of just, again, give him some more quicker options. That's the type of stuff I'd like to see from the next coach.
Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gahn, that needs to be resolved, right? Hamzat Shemaiah versus Sean Strickland. But I will accept Hamzat Shemaiah versus Fluffy Hernandez. If Fluffy beats Sean Strickland, I'll take either of those. Here's another one of my, but you accept these as secondary.
100%.
Armin Sarukian versus UFC lightweight champion. We cannot just keep having Armin doing grappling matches and eating and all this stuff.
I'm kind of okay with it.
No, I'm not.
No,
I know you love it.
You get the first pick in the underrated player draft. Who are you taking?
Jalen Duren has never made an All-Star game. He's never made an All-NBA team. He's gotten so much better as a scorer this year. Jalen Duren is like a legit All-Star this year. And so because everybody talks about the Detroit situation like it's trash and Cade Cunningham, I'm going to say he's still a little bit underrated, and he's my number 1 pick.
Bit of a stunner. Johnson and Schifrin finished in 4th in team combined. The U.S. team of Jackie Wiles and Paula Molsten win bronze. So we get a bronze out of that. A little bit of a shocker here to talk about Alpine. Julia Mancuso, we really appreciate your time. 4-time Olympic medalist. So what's your reaction? That I always feel bad when I come in and immediately make bronze feel like that is less than. It's a medal in the Olympics. Let's all calm down a little bit. But what is your reaction to that outcome?
Well, for Jackie Wiles and Paul Moulton, the bronze is a dream. I mean, they had a chance at gold, really. If Paula would have continued her run, she was skiing really strong out of the start. And I think also just looking at it, and seeing what happened to Michaela and Breezy, it just goes to show how hard it is to actually fight for that medal and to perform on the world stage when it matters. You can't leave anything on the mountain. And if you go out there and ski your best, yeah, winning a medal is winning a medal. And I'm sure that Jackie and Paula are stoked on that tonight.
I feel like there have been so many stories of resilience in this year's games. We saw that with Lindsey Vonn and her, attempted epic comeback. We saw that with Breezy Johnson dealing with injury after injury. And now Michaela Schifrin, she missed the podium in 2022. She had a crash in 2024 that left her with injuries and some PTSD. So looking at Michaela Schifrin specifically, what does this mean for her comeback efforts?
Well, I think in some ways the team combined, it's a new event and it's a fun event. So I hope she looks at it not as a missed opportunity and doesn't get in her head about it, because the individual events really are where she can shine. And, anything can happen. The slalom hill for the combine is a little bit easier. Now going into the tech events, they're going to have a harder slope. They're going to prepare it a little differently, more like what she's used to. And so, yeah, I think it's always disappointing coming in fourth, especially at the Olympics, especially when your teammate wins the first run and all the pressure's on you. But I think at the same time, I hope she really looks at it as like an opportunity. It was just a team event and we can reset and get really excited for those individual events.
We talked to Apolo Ohno earlier this morning, and he talked a lot about ice conditions and how that's just something that everybody has to adjust to. What are the slope conditions like in Italy compared? Like, what's the adjustment like for the skiers?
Well, normally, actually, the snow in Italy is really perfect. It is more natural snow. And this is for the women's side. I can't speak for the men. The men, they normally inject more water. On the women's, they normally slip it more, and it's a more compact, grippy surface. And that's what the snow was. You could see in the slalom, there was a lot of snow flying, and it was a very fast course. So it's a little softer than normal. The harder the snow makes it better for ruts and makes it more responsive. But in general, the snow's perfect in Italy. Most people love the snow there.
How long does it take for skiers? How many runs does it take for them to get a feel for what those conditions look like?
Honestly, that's one of the hardest things in ski racing. They try to prepare the warm-up hills similar to the race hill, but nothing compares. You really only get the snow that's on the track. You can test your skis. Sometimes skiers will bring their race skis and try them a little bit on the slope. In downhill, you get training runs on the exact same hill, so you get to test it. But in Super G, Giant Slalom, all the other events, the only time you're going to feel the real snow is the second you leave the start gate. And so that's another variable you have to deal with in ski racing.
Okay, so take me to that moment when you get through the start gate, because when I'm watching at home, I'm cheering them on. I'm freaking out. I'm like, don't hit that. Ow, that probably hurts. Oh my gosh, that's probably overwhelming. That's probably scary. What goes through your mind? You hear start, you hear go. Where does your mind go?
Well, that's all the training. That's the years of preparation. And I mean, nothing can necessarily prepare you for the moment you're in the Olympic start gate, but all of the other competitions leading up to it is kind of all the same. They have a beep that goes off. And for me, I felt like I would just get into like a rhythm when I heard the beeps and clear my mind and get ready to kick out of the start gate and go. But I definitely feel nerves, and I'm thinking the same thing as you. When I'm watching these athletes now, I'm thinking, wow, what are they thinking about right now? I hope they're just, calm and collected and excited to kick out of the start gate. I mean, that's the goal. That's the pinnacle of sport, is being able to be completely in that moment. And it doesn't matter if it's the Olympics or your backyard birthday party, you should be able to clear your mind and just ski.
Now, easier said than done. Let's give a little bit of love to Breezy. She won downhill gold. You know how hard she fought back after missing 2022. What did that comeback moment mean when you saw it?
I was just so excited. I've been seeing so much talent in Breezy from the second she made the World Cup tour. She is the I guess I don't want to say reincarnation because Peekaboo's still alive, but I saw the same thing. Like Peekaboo Street is Breezy Johnson, and she has this feeling like no other for snow, and she knows how to find speed. So I felt like it was just a matter of time. And the thing that I admire the most about her is she was definitely an athlete that slowly stuck with it, knew in her mind that she was going to make it to the top eventually. And through her ups and downs, she was kind of like this slow and steady force that just kept her eye on the prize and kept training hard. And now here she is, our gold medalist in the Olympics and gold medalist at the last World Championships. And yeah, it's just really incredible.
She is such a badass. So many times throughout her career, she could have said, you know, I'm ready to walk away, but she kept fighting, and it's for this moment to get the glory of that moment of being now an Olympic gold medalist. But I did see her gold medal fell off of the thing, and then it fell and broke into pieces. Is that bad luck in Olympic world? What does that mean? Does she get a new one?
Oh my gosh, that just means she's having fun with it. But yeah, I saw a couple of their gold medals broke, and medals are meant to be worn. So I saw her press conference where she wasn't too worried. She thinks they'll fix it. So we'll see, because she'll definitely be wanting to wear that around after the Super G race. Maybe she'll add another one after the Super G race, but she'll definitely be wanting to wear that around the Olympic Village and have fun with it.
As she should.
Do you ever just break yours out every once in a while? Just wear them? I would. I'm just saying, if I had medals, I would break them out and wear them, Julie. Like, are you ever just throwing the medals on and walking around a little bit?
I took the wrong bag here. Otherwise, I would have been like, yeah. I've been traveling with my gold medal lately because I live in the tropics now, and so if I just keep my medal like sitting there, I don't really have anywhere to display it. Started to rust. So I was like, I'm just going to start bringing this around. I feel like it's one of those things, if you use it more, it'll just stay in better shape. And I love going to the ski resort, and sometimes I'll be like, hey, I have something in my pocket. Want to check it out?
How cool. What a flex. Incredible. You did mention the Super G event, though. The women's Super G event is coming up on Thursday. What can we expect from Team USA in that one?
Well, Breezy Johnson was on the podium in the last Super G, and that was a huge surprise. She is not as technical. She's more of this speed skier that knows how to let her skis follow the fall line. So it could just depend on the set. There's different coaches that set the courses, and there's parameters where they have to set the gates. And sometimes they set it tourneys, sometimes they can set it more like the downhill. So if we see something that's more like the downhill set, Breezy's chances are really good to get on the podium. She's definitely not the favorite, but she would be a good underdog surprise. And there's some young girls also competing. So Keely Cashman, who's from my hometown, she also just had a career best in a couple World Cups ago, and she was just off the podium. So I think that we have some surprise chances for Team America. The favorite going into that is the Italian superstar Sofia Goggia. So the Italians are going to be very excited to watch her, and hopefully she can perform for her fans at home.
When you have won a medal, how hard is it to then refocus for a next race? What's the impact it has on you as you continue through the Olympics?
I think it just depends on where you're at in your career. If you're a favorite in a bunch of events, it's sort of this confidence booster that you know you're skiing well. I've had it both ways. I've had it where I was skiing really well in all events, so it was like the confidence booster. And then I had it also going into the Sochi Olympics. I was just struggling that season, and I feel like it was almost gave me too much confidence. I won this bronze medal in the combined, but I had won the downhill portion of that. So going into the downhill, I was so amped up, and almost like having the medal, I felt like it took a little pressure, like too much pressure off. I think some athletes perform well under pressure. It's just this interesting thing. Sometimes pressure helps you step up to the plate and perform beyond your limits, and sometimes pressure can absolutely crumble you. For me, pressure always made me perform better. So I think winning the Olympics, it just depends on where you are in that cycle. If it gives you more pressure or takes the pressure away, and what kind of pressure you need. There's really no one way to perform at the Olympics, and you can't really stereotype any athlete. People just get motivated by so many different factors, and that's what makes it so special.
It is absolutely special. And one of the most special storylines that we've seen come out of this games is Lindsey Vonn. She came out of retirement at 41 years old, despite several knee injuries, and made a comeback to Milan Cortina. And then she ruptured her ACL, went back out there for another run, and broke a part of her leg. What are some things that you've been hearing from Team USA, or maybe your reaction to her racing through all of this adversity?
I mean, I just think from the beginning when I saw the crash in Crans, Montana, it was just heartbreaking. The whole story has been such a story of courage and coming back after the injury. But honestly, I feel like the heartbreak started when she crashed, because it really was this storybook fairy tale. She came back 6 years later, in her 40s. We're the same age. We competed our whole career together, and our lives are so different. So being able to kind of relive that in her shoes, it was incredible. And watching her go from last season to where she was seeing if she could come back to winning the downhill standings this season and going into the Olympics as the absolute favorite, it was like a dream come true. And I was here for it. We were all here for it. So it was kind of just shocking when she had that crash and then having to go into the Olympics without an ACL. I mean, the whole story, there's so much drama to it, but at the same time, so much courage. And I feel like it was this story that we all wish never happened. I would have loved to see her going into the Olympics as just like the healthy favorite and watch her dominate. But then obviously the most unfortunate thing happened when she caught her arm there and went sideways. And then hearing about her broken leg and the multiple surgery it's going to take is really just heartbreaking. But also she is just an incredible human and athlete and wouldn't want it any other way. She gave it her absolute all, and that's what she always did. And it's just super inspiring. And I really hope that she's not in too much pain and that it doesn't take too many surgeries to fix the leg. I think we're all kind of like, we don't have that much information about the injury.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're honored to have you helping us with all of this coverage throughout the course of the Olympics. We're truly honored to get to spend a little time and get your breakdowns, Julia. We look forward to hanging out with you again. It's not the last time, but thank you so much for your brilliance and your expertise. We appreciate you hanging out with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Julia.
She's a legend. She's she's a medalist. She's everything, and she'll be back with us more throughout the course of the Olympics. Coming up next, it's official. Klint Kubiak headed to Vegas. What's it mean? We'll tell you next.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to this.
Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knippel and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knippel. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70. And then like the air went out of the ball for a month. And it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
Seahawks offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak confirms he will be the next head coach for the Raiders. That was on the sideline after the Super Bowl. They've now made it official. Once you put out the hype video, now you're official. It's like telling everybody on social media that you're dating. That is exactly what's happened. Klint Kubiak is now the head coach of my beloved Raiders. I feel pretty good. Like, look, coming out of this, we already talked about the fact that the Seahawks are going to have to make a massive adjustment. I think they just lost a cheat code for them and an offensive coordinator that was particularly gifted this year. But, Caroline, if you're the Raiders, you got to look back at that Super Bowl and think, man, there were some moments there that remind you why you wanted Klint Kubiak to be your head coach. I think when you look back at that game, it gave you even a little bit more of a glimmer of hope.
I'm glad that you're excited as a Raiders fan. I think that you should be excited. I think all Raiders fans should be excited. I mean, you got one of the hottest names on the market. You kind of fit that mold of young, up-and-coming offensive coordinator, smart, genius, offensive mind who knows how to win. When you look at what Klint Kubiak was able to work with Sam Darnold, I mean, you look at this Seahawks team. Cooper Kupp was kind of, thrown away by the Rams as an aging, expensive player. They were able to make Cooper Kupp a really big part of this offense. Kenneth Walker, I don't think was a household name. I was even watching the game with my fiance. He was like, who is this guy? I was like, that's Kenneth Walker. He's not a Saquon, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor type of name, but he was a Super Bowl MVP. You look at Sam Darnold, and I know he had the 14-win season last year in Minnesota. It's not like that they just, some no name that they turned into a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but Sam Darnold could have been signed by anyone in the National Football League. He was signed by the Seahawks, and Klint Kubiak was able to work with Sam Darnold enough to get them to a Super Bowl. I think what has made Klint Kubiak so impressive is working with a lot of these pieces that weren't viewed as certified elite, 5-star certified celebrity type of players and turn them into what could be at times an incredibly explosive offense. So I think that's a sign of a good coach, is working with the ingredients that you have and turning them into something gourmet. Love this for the Raiders. On the Seahawks side of things, though, I think you have to be cognizant of, or maybe even anxious of, coordinator regression. It's a real thing. We saw it with the Eagles. You your offensive coordinator leaves to become the head coach. Kellen Moore to become the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. The Eagles' offense this year was unwatchable. We saw it with the Detroit Lions. When there's a brain drain at the coordinator position and you don't have a coach that has a specificity on either side of the ball, then you see a regression. So if I'm the Seahawks, I don't think it's automatically just plug and play and you're going to be totally fine with losing Klint Kubiak. I think that should be something that Seahawks fans are at least cognizant of moving forward.
Yeah, look, and from the Raiders fandom perspective, I'm the first to admit I thought the Pete Carroll hire would be better. It wasn't, right? So all you can do is restart. And this is one of the hardest things for fans of teams that suck. We have fan trauma. If you're a fan of a team that has generationally sucked, what you carry with you is a baggage that comes with generational losing, right? So here we go again. One of the things you have to just sort of acknowledge, kind of like in a relationship, just because your ex was crazy doesn't mean the girl you're dating now is going to also be crazy. You have to be willing to reset, and that's difficult because from a fan standpoint, the answer will always be, I'll believe it when I see it. But from Klint Kubiak's standpoint, the minute he walks into the door, and whether this is a conversation about a new head coach for the Raiders or any other team that is perennially bad, the thing you have to remind yourself is that for that coach, the previous regimes aren't his problem. Klint Kubiak comes in with a clean slate. Fans may not want to hear that because we don't have a clean slate. And certainly some people in the organization, it's the same owner, Mark Davis. It's the same GM and John Spytek. And certainly having caution to being particularly optimistic makes sense. But from Klint Kubiak's standpoint, he walks in the building, whatever happened with every single, whether it's Callahan or Antonio Pierce or Josh McDaniels or John Gruden, and I'm just naming coaches that Max Crosby's played for. My God,
those
if
are
you
some
look at the
doozies.
room, thank you so much. But for Klint Kubiak, none of that's his problem. He comes in completely fresh, and that's why I constantly say, if you can't have hope now, then what's the point? I know that what we all do is say, well, and for me particularly, I've watched mostly losing football. I think I've seen 4 or 5 winning seasons in the last 30 years. I'd have to go back and recount, but I think that's the number. So if I'm looking at that, it's easy for me to say same problem, nothing's going to change it. I have to be positive that Klint Kubiak is going to come in because otherwise there's no hope. And I choose to live a hopeful life as a fan. So I look today and say, all right, you have a young, sharp offensive mind that's wildly respected. People inside the league that I talk to tell me we just got a great coach, right? When we started the hiring cycle, the number of people that would have said Klint Kubiak was one of the it names. We got an it name. I believe they're going to draft Fernando Mendoza first overall. Now Fernando Mendoza is going to develop with a smart offensive mind who also then gets to play with Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers and get those pieces together. They have a lot of money to spend. I think there's a real reason for optimism and hope in Vegas. Now, certainly, I've said that before, and I've had my heart ripped out. But if you're not willing to love again, then what's the point? And that's where I am with my favorite team. That's where I am with this coaching regime. Like, at some point, you just got to put it out there and be willing to be hurt again in the process. Our relationships with our favorite football teams are very similar to broken and dysfunctional relationships in our lives. I'm just going to look at this as a fresh start. It's a new one, and I'm going to give myself the opportunity, Caroline, to love again.
You should. That's all you can do. Without sports, there would be no next year. And I love to hear that, the hope and the optimism.
Fact.
Because you as a Raiders fan have every right to be jaded. You as a Raiders fan have every right to say, well, how is this guy going to be different? Because I hear a lot of Jets fans saying that, whether it's the coach or the quarterback position of, why is this guy going to be different? I'll believe it when I see it. And look, there's a lot of fan bases that I think have every right to feel that way. But you have every right to feel hopeful for the Raiders as well. And I'm not just saying that because you are a Raiders fan. I'm not just saying that to blow smoke. I'm saying that because there is every reason to be optimistic. You have a head coach that just won a Super Bowl. You have the #1 pick in the NFL draft that is likely going to be used on a guy that has all of the tools and all of the pieces to be a franchise quarterback in the National Football League. And also a guy with an attitude and a personality that is so incredibly difficult to not fall in love with. He has the winning, the hunger for winning and the optimism that I think is probably necessary in the Raiders organization. And then you also have Tom Brady, who is largely calling the shots in that organization. So why not feel hopeful and optimistic?
I am hopeful and optimistic. I got some news at the buzzer before we get you out of here. We got some Alabama basketball news. Charles Bediako now been ruled ineligible by a judge. This is the one that's gone back and forth. Caroline, obviously this is the wild, wild west of everybody trying to figure out who's eligible to play college basketball and who isn't. The latest development, he is now inactive, at least for now.
I hate for him, for Charles Bediako, the person and the player, that his career is the one that had to be made an example of. But this is the right move. This is good for college basketball. This is good for college sports. We have to draw the line somewhere. What is stopping anyone in professional sports that still has NCAA eligibility from coming back? What's stopping any big-time program from paying LeBron James $10 million to come pay for them? And I know that that's an extreme example, but if Charles Bediako could come back and play, then where does it stop? So I think this is a good day for college athletics.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, also, the NCAA selection committee has made it clear that they're not going to factor the 5 games he played into their rankings and seeding. So there will be consequence to this. But again, as Caroline mentioned, I think this is the right ruling, but this is not necessarily the final ruling. These things go back and forth so much. And until there is clarity on who's eligible and how they become eligible and what that eligibility means, the Wild Wild West is the phrase we keep using because it is a lawless society, Caroline. Like at this point, we're all just guessing on what the courts are going to continue to do.
We still have a Joey Aguilar ongoing legal back and forth. We still have a Trinidad Chambliss ongoing legal back and forth. All reports look like neither of those two will be eligible to come back to college football, which, you know, I hate that for Ole Miss fans. I hate that for Tennessee fans. But again, I go back to at some point, we have to draw the line.
We will keep breaking it down right here. Yahoo Sports Daily will be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern. For Caroline Fenton, I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching. Come back and see us again tomorrow.
Give us your breakout fighters of 2026.
You're not going to believe that. Number 1 is Manchester top teams, Atiba Gutierrez. I think he's going to be
the next big African star already is.
He's chiseled out of stone. He's got unbelievable power, great skill, huge for the weight class. Very, very impressive. And again, you speak to the guys over at Manchester Top Team, they could not be more excited about his potential.
Usually I would dunk on a team that's 8-9 going to the playoffs. You don't deserve it. For Carolina, celebrate it. This was a big step forward season. However you got there, you wanted some hope. You wanted something to be happy about. You backed into it, fine. I don't care. The Panthers did have some quality wins this year. They did seem to be making progress. So for the Panthers, hey, step forward, good job, celebrate it. It's a really nice year for the Carolina Panthers to win this division no matter how they did it.
I don't know how anyone could expect Kalen DeBoer to get Alabama back to where Nick Saban